us with live streaming.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi, Janet.
Hi, how are you, Keith?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
I cannot see you. Can you join us by or?
Oh, I think my Zoom is set for no video. Just a minute. Let me. I don't know how to switch it back. Let's see.
I love the feeling of sitting in a circle.
Yeah,
like
let me see if I can figure out how to join video without losing you. Just a sec. Okay.
Okay, I think we're live on Facebook right now, so that's good.
Wonderful.
So here we are. And Janice, you can feel like you can share your video. That's great. And if you can't, that's okay too.
No, I can. I just have to figure it out.
Okay, we're actually going to start, I guess, in a minute here. Great. So
okay,
there you are. Hi, Janice.
Hi.
Hi. So basically what we're going to do is I'm going to start with Hildur. We'll go over a little bit about what this is all about in terms of her passion for the environment. And we'll set it up a little bit like an interview format with a bit of a presentation. And then afterwards, there'll be some time for questions. So I will be putting everyone on mute in a second, and that way there's no sounds, and I'll put myself on mute too when it's appropriate.
And I will too. And I apologize if my homeschoolers will provide some background noise throughout. I think we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah. So hi, Hildur.
Hi, are you recording?
I believe we are recording right now. It says that we're recording, so I think we're good to go. It says live on Facebook, so we're going live.
We are alive.
Yes, we are. So Hildur, I'm very excited that we're doing this live stream, and very excited that you're here. And you and I know each other for I guess the last 3 or 4 years. And one of the things I've always been struck by is your passion for the environment. You're such a passionate person in general, and very effusive in terms of your passions. So I'm wondering about this. When we talked about the environment, I'm wondering, for those that don't know your background, a little bit about your background, and then why is it important now, dealing with what we're dealing with in general? Why is it important for us to look at the environment in general, and what does that mean? So with that, let me just say thank you again, and thank you for being here and inviting us into your home. So please tell us a little bit about your passion.
Thank you, Keith, for having me here. And thank you for bringing us together in this way as a community in this time with this channel. Such wonderful offerings. I'd like to start with encouraging whoever is watching to look at the prayer group, the meditation channel. There are so many wonderful offerings that help us in this time of social distancing. About me, I grew up in Iceland, and it was a simple life. And then I studied biochemistry and biophysics and graduated with a PhD. And in the end of my career as a research scientist, I was at NYU Medical School, and I was pregnant with my son, and obviously quite hormonal at the time. And I believe hormonal women make really good decisions, very instinctive and life-sustaining decisions, because I stood there with my plastic gloves and the white coat, and I looked around and there were toxins and carcinogens. And then I stepped into, I was doing molecular imaging. So much of my work was in really strong electromagnetic fields and X-rays. And thinking of my child, something shifted within me. And I became increasingly aware of my environment, starting in the lab and the way we disposed of chemicals, and then in the world. And then I remember the day when I decided to step out of the lab. It was also facilitated by the options I had were to stay 8 weeks at home with my baby, And I come from Iceland, where 1 year at least is recommended for an infant to bond with parents. Parents can share the 1 year, so a father could stay 3 months and mother 9 months, or six, whichever way, but you're not asked to separate so quickly. So for me to leave my son in the hands of someone else after 8 weeks, it just didn't work. And my boss at this time said, so if you get off this train, Hildur, there is no getting back on, meaning the tenure track, the tenure track train. And I said, well, I'm going for a walk in the woods. And funny enough, I'm now leading guided nature walks in the woods. So I've been walking in the woods ever since. And I joined Tree Sisters, Women's Eating Chains.
So wait a second, Hildur, you were a biophysicist and here you had a child, and here you were sort of having this revelation about life, about what was valuable in life. And here you had this moment where you said, okay, I can't do that anymore. I need to connect more with nature. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and then I joined Tree Sisters, and that really helped with this transition I was in at the time. Tree Sisters is a global organization reforesting the tropics and empowering women in the areas where we reforest. And that commitment, we started small. It was a small group of us, and now we're planting about 2 million trees a year with so many members that I've lost count.
Wow.
So just witnessing that an ordinary person can really help be part of a movement of restoration and repair. When we reforest in the tropics, we're helping not just maintain biodiversity, but also stabilize the climate. So that's the call to action, and education was a big part of it. I really didn't care. 15 years ago, I wasn't educated. I had a PhD in biophysics, but I was not educated about my environment. The moment I left the lab and went into a more direct contact with the natural world, I've been educating myself since and felt the need to educate others, because I think becoming a mother, all of a sudden I went from being concerned to really becoming a mom that was driven to make sure that our children have a future. It's really that dramatic. I'm a climate activist today, I guess. So I went from a concerned individual to an environmental educator, and the more I learned, the call became stronger. And now we're actually all sheltering in place. And it is a good year to do so. We're a little less than a month away from Earth Day. And I think it's appropriate for all of us to understand how globalization is affecting us. Air travel is not just spreading pathogens, but also affecting air quality. And scientists had actually found this virus 5 years ago in a cave in Hunan. But there is a lack of governments taking scientists seriously worldwide. So
Hildur, what can we do now to really take care of ourselves in the environment, in the stay in place, stay at home, shelter kind of environment? What do we do, and how do we take care of ourselves?
So many things we can do, and as we are at home, we can all start becoming part of the solution. And I created, can I play my slideshow here? I created a little slideshow for, I really enjoy my, do you see the slides? Is this on?
So on the bottom there, it says share screen. So have you clicked that, and then you click your other button to get your slide. You see them?
Yeah. Is it not on?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Let me try this again. I will share. Do you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Maybe you can, I sent it to you yesterday.
Yeah, I can try to pick it up. 1 second, 1 second. We do that. Let's see.
You're more technically
Yep, let me
advanced
just see if
than I
can
am
pull it
in
up
this.
here. 1 second.
It worked before, but of course, as we're
Yeah.
going live.
Well, of course, that's because we're live, Hildur, and that's,
Yes,
you
we're
know,
live.
that's the way it works, right? When you want something, it doesn't necessarily come up when you want it.
But the most important part is we're alive.
So I'm going to be the screen clicker here, and
Amazing.
Can you see the slides?
Yes,
now?
perfect.
Okay, is this where you wanted to start?
Yes, so if you say present, yeah. So what I really, up in the right corner.
Oh yeah.
We can just,
slide. Let me see.
I think if you go in the right corner to this button.
The other thing over there. Sorry about that.
Exactly.
There you go. Can you see it?
Yes, amazing.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, so I really enjoy my daily walks, and I was excited to see that many are using their time to clean up the yard waste. But a big problem I am having right now is to see organic waste in plastic bags. And the town of North Hempstead has a service and is picking up our organic waste in brown bags. We can get those brown bags at the hardware stores in town. So a call to action right now in order to be sustainable would be to consider letting leaves and organic waste be returned to the earth. So just a side note, every year we're losing about 24 billion tons of topsoil. That's the topmost layer of the soil that supports life. So a life-sustaining practice would be to consider leaving the organic waste to compost and be returned to the soil. Unfortunately, when we give the organic waste over to landfills, it's just going to add to the problem in terms of emissions. Methane gas emissions, for example, are about 25 times more potent than CO2, and even worse, incinerators. And that's going to add to global warming and climate destabilization. Another problem I have on my walks is the gas powered leaf blowers that are not just adding to emissions, but also in this time with coronavirus, we really should ban that, because these are not just a problem for people with allergy. It's, blowing into the ground like this stirs up whatever is on the surfaces, and it enters the atmosphere, so to speak. So dog droppings, all sorts of viruses, bacteria, and pet dander, and any other allergen can be mixed into the air that you're breathing when you're walking by. So this is really not a good practice. And I am a big believer in climate conscious gardening. So maybe even considering the earth we're living on, like in my immediate, now we're sort of sheltering in place and looking at where we are. I'm blessed with a small front and backyard. It's modest, but I can be of service. I can even look at ways to sequester carbon instead of emitting it. So we don't have a gas-powered leaf blower or a mower. It can be battery driven, right? Yeah.
Yeah, question, Hildur. I saw a video on COVID-19 in terms of the spread and back to the leaves and so on. Basically, they described it as sort of that we don't see it, but we're sort of in a submolecule haze or mist that everybody sort of walks through, and that this is the way it spreads. So it certainly, it lingers in the air, and with the quality of the wind and so on, it subsides. So what I hear you saying is that actually these leaf blowers, not only in terms of the gas, but also in terms of the what they're doing in general,
Yes,
is they're creating
yes.
much more of the mist, so that the dissipation, if anybody does cough into the air, the dissipation of that is it's harder to dissipate, and we're more likely to get sick by inhaling these molecules, even if we're outside. Somebody just went by, they coughed, you have a leaf blower, and then all of a sudden you're in the mist.
Yes, this viruses, they find lives for a long time on surfaces, even for days, depending on the surface. And this virus is not going to replicate on its own. A virus is just a piece of nucleic acid that's covered by a lipid coat, and it's sitting there waiting to be picked up. Somebody touches it and touches their nose, and it's done. So we're being called to clean surfaces, and you've seen maybe videos from Rome where they're sort of cleaning the streets, so to speak. And it's not so much in the air, but it could be in little droplets. And so I think we should really put down those gas-powered leaf blowers in general, but especially today. And on that note, I found it interesting that we ran out of Purell so quickly, because the best solution for lipid-bound viruses like the coronavirus is soap and water. When you use Purell, you usually do like this. You mist these areas. We don't lather in Purell, right? If we use soap and we get all the parts of the hand and then rinse off and dry, it's just much more effective and better for your hands, because you will not strip off the protective layer. So please, if you're in your house, if you're sheltering in place, there's no need to use Purell.
Great. So I know we have 8 minutes left.
Yes, let's move on.
Time check. Just want to make sure we're on track.
Yes, let's move on.
Great information, Hildur.
Thank you.
Oh,
and we can move to the next.
I'm the guy doing the slides, sorry.
Yes, you're the slide, you're the man behind the slides. Yes,
go.
so what I was, on that note, we can be part of the problem. That's not a life-sustaining. Here you can see the not life-sustaining practices. Obviously pesticides, anything that kills should be used with caution. If we cannot walk on the grass, it's probably not good for the web of life. Planting, I am with Rewild Long Island. I'm on the steering committee for Rewild Long Island, and we're encouraging planting of natives. And that means native plants recognized by the insects. Here on Long Island, the insect population is starving, so to speak. We've planted exotics. One of my friends, Rusty Smith, estimates that in suburban Long Island landscape, we have about 95% of our back and front yard is non-native. So it did not evolve to meet the needs of our insects, or the insects did not evolve to make use of these plants, if that makes sense. And so with Rewild Long Island, we're a movement, and we have a wonderful email list where we support one another. And right now we're offering a COVID-safe online plants sale, where you can buy these pollinator plants that you know are of a native stock and will serve our insect population. And why we should care is because the produce aisles at the supermarket would be largely empty if we did not feed our pollinators, the bees and other insects. And they're also a very important part of turning over soil. They're our decomposers. They're the main recyclers. And for healthy ground to stand on, that's very important. So if we move over to the next slide. I mentioned this before, yard waste, what's happening to my yard waste. We can move on as we don't have so much time left. evolution has led us to the point that we're bagging the yard waste. I am calling for everyone to stop the practice of putting organic waste in plastic bags. Consider either in a container. They will take, town of North Hempstead will take our yard waste and dispose of it sensibly if it's in a brown bag or in a container, just like that you can mark yard waste. And if you go one more click, you'll see an enlightened response is to compost it at home. And I know many people feel overwhelmed by that thought to start your own compost, but composting yard waste, here you see a compost pile. The Brooklyn Botanical Garden has a very wonderful guide here, Easy Compost. It's very easy to do. But if you're not ready to compost your food scraps, you can start with the yard waste, and it's a really satisfying thing to do because you watch how the leaves and the whatever scraps you have in your yard become healthy soil. And if you give with one click, send us over to the next slide. This is what a compost looks like. Can be very basic, and we can enclose it completely. I will be on in these Wednesday meetings giving helpful tips and hints on how to build your own compost, and we can go on to the next slide. What happens if we do this? We become part of a circular economy, restoration and repair. We're not just our organic waste is not destined for a landfill. It's a very problematic, and I like this scheme that says end of life. It's really the end of life if we continue in this linear thinking. Once we start thinking in circular ways in this way, sort of, I'm not going to ship my yard waste into a landfill where it rots. I'm going to use it actually to feed the pollinators on the ground where I'm standing. That's a call to action, and it can be quite fun to do. And it's easiest to do in community, and that's where Rewild Long Island comes in. And if we move on to the next slide, I'm going to not pause for too long on this one, but rewilding is a way to restore habitats. And we can move on as we, in the interest of time. No worries, we're not restoring habitats for bears and wolves. We're restoring the natural habitat here for pollinators. So we are planting pollinator-friendly plants, and in that way, supporting that cycle of life. I like this picture because you have the bee and the butterfly together. And we're all in this together right now. So we may as well be part of the solution. And I think I have a slide there from Rewild Long Island, and I'd like to end here. Here's our website. And we're hosting a native plant sale right now. You can email me if you want to learn more about us. You can also, on this website, sign up for our community online that's in a Google group where a lot of questions can be answered between friends. We are not, we're really not experts. I am not, well, let's go back to I'm gonna just end there because next time we can, yeah, right here. I can bring next Wednesday the other slides. I wanna leave some time for questions, but one thing that's important to mention here is I'm not a master gardener. I am just a regular mom who is interested in making sure my children's future and all of our children's future is sustainable. And we do this together as a community. We're supporting each other. We ask each other questions on composting, on planting, how we can be of service in our houses, in our back and front yard, just taking responsibility for the land we live on. And here on Long Island, it's very important, this part, take responsibility. What's your landscaper doing? A lot of people here are not able to tend to their own land because of consuming, you know, the work schedule here is New Yorkers are busy people. And so if you have a landscaper, make an effort to communicate with the landscaper. Make sure that, because many people mean well, but they don't know that their landscaper is actually using pesticides and gas-powered devices and is bagging the leaves in plastic bags. And I found once we had families join us here at the Rewild Long Island, and now we have hundreds of it's really encouraging the positive reception in our community. And once educated and once the conversation starts, the landscapers are willing to make changes as well. And that's a very positive development. So now I'll
Thank you,
stop
Hildur.
talking. And
so Hildur, I'm very excited that you're giving this, especially now, because one of the things as the weather gets better, and I know it with me and my wife, is we're going out more, walking more, going around the area more, doing more gardening and getting out for exercise and being more in connection with nature. So this is very timely and very appropriate that we're really taking care of our environment. So let me just stop there and ask if Janice, if you have any questions, or anyone else who may or may not be on the call has any questions.
One of the things I wanted to mention is I do some composting in my backyard, and I have one of those circular bins you just spin. It has a slider and you dump it in. And that way, I think people tend to worry about having a pile of dirt in their yard, you know, an open.
yes.
Around here, we worry about all that stuff. And that closed one actually is kind of nice because it speeds up the process, and it also, it's not, you can stick it in a corner of your yard and compost your produce and things like that pretty easily. But it does need brown, leaves.
Yes.
So
and
I
that's
keep a pile of, I have to keep leaves too, which, again, it has to be easy for people to change their habits. They don't change their habits if it's a pain in the neck. So, I just have a big closed plastic bin for leaves, and I just throw some leaves on top of it in the fall. So I always have a supply.
Yep. And I want to,
if your landscaper takes away all your leaves, it's hard to compost.
Yes, exactly. And you're mentioning a really good point. So the way I do it is I start in the tumbler,
mm-hmm.
and that's a great way to start when it's still in sort of food form.
Mm-hmm.
And adding the leaves is very important. And on that note, it's very important to know, many people think the browns those are the carbon containing materials. Many think that coffee grounds are brown, but they're actually green. They're the nitrogen containing, right? And so once we get to know our compost and we start understanding we need much more of the brown. But what's good to do is to start in the tumbler, and then when the tumbler fills, because I have kids, so there's a lot of turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's in a little bit more processed form, you can put it into those piles. So keep using the tumbler as the first step,
right?
But then moving it out of the tumbler for the second and the third step.
I just throw it in my garden.
Yes.
I skip the second and third step and just throw it in the garden. But
I love when I have to preach to the experts.
But honestly, in the fall, to have the landscaper leave the leaf litter under the shrubs and in the gardens and whatever is a pain. I mean, I had to tell them 3 times.
Yes.
Just they have this way of doing things, and they're used to scraping everything clean for the winter time. And I had to go out, and I finally said, Mike, maybe it's the guy. Would you please tell him to leave the leaves under the bushes and that sort of thing for the winter time. And when Mike asked him, my husband asked him to do it, he did it. So
that's excellent.
Maybe he just needed to hear it from a man, who knows, but it is something that they're not used to doing, and the property owner has to know to do it and also tell him to do it.
That's a great point, Dennis.
It's just, it's not, the yard isn't messy in the wintertime. Your neighbors aren't going to be talking about you. It's just leaf litter underneath your bushes, and it's fine.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
there's,
And
it's interesting. It's just a cultural thing.
it's a
But
cultural
people
thing.
want to do what's right, and they want to plant native plants in their garden. They, you know, they're happy to do it. It makes them feel good. But A, it has to be easy, and B, it, you know, they just have to be reminded, you know, constantly. It's hard to change habits.
It is really, but now is a good time to start because we all had to change our habits dramatically. And
Right.
so I feel like when we're being called to shelter in place like this, self-care is so important to have a healthy routine.
Can we get those brown bags now, or is that all closed?
I will actually, if we post this video on the Center for Wellbeing, I'll research that and make sure I put that in the thread. That's a
Right.
really
That,
good
yeah,
question.
knowing, yeah, where in Nassau, you know, the website, you would get those brown bags. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they're available right now because everything's sort of shut down, but
You can use bins.
yeah, we usually just use garbage, you know, we don't put it in plastic, but I don't know what happens when it goes to the garbage truck. My guess is it just gets tossed in with everything. I mean,
Yeah,
they say
and,
they're recyclable, but
And Hildur, I will, if you give me a link for the bags, I'll
Yes.
post it onto the Center for Wellbeing channel. And also, Janice, if you haven't joined the Facebook group for the Center for Wellbeing, please look it up and join.
oh, okay.
Feel free.
All right, good. Okay.
So this will also be posted over there as well. Okay.
Great.
So,
Okay,
so,
thank you.
so Hildur, we'll be doing this next week.
I love it.
Be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing what's going on, and certainly looking forward to any other ideas and any other programs that you can present. It's very good material, and thank
Yes,
you.
and Janice, I'd love to hear from you. You know, ideas of what you'd be interested in hearing about.
Okay.
As you have also a lot. We all have something to offer here in this conversation. So I would like to be the guest here with an invitation for others to share as well.
Right.
I have a couple of friends who are very well versed in composting, so I can see in future Wednesday meetings to invite them to lead half of the session, talk about there are ways to compost inside the house with microbes that doesn't smell at all. It's called bokashi. It's a method they use during the winter months, especially in Iceland. My brother does that. And I have friends who are just starting doing that here in Port Washington. And it's a smell-free, in-house type of method for turning over matter. It's very interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you soon, and thanks everyone. Thanks, Janice.
See you soon.
Thanks, Janice, for joining us, and thank you, Keith, for hosting.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.